Hello, hello. Today we are going to be talking about earthquakes. Yes, it's when the earth shakes. So, an earthquake, you can see in the picture, everything breaks due to the shaking of the land. But what causes an earthquake? What makes the earth to shake? Hmm. Well, the earthquake is caused by a sudden slip on a fault. Remember that we talked about faults when we were seeing the plate tectonics? Yes, the tectonic plates are always slowly moving. Remember, due to the mantle that is a semi liquid, but they get stuck sometimes in their edges. They bump into each other and they make friction. And this friction is liberated into energy. So that happens when the rocks that are underground suddenly break along the fault. And the accumulated strain that has been there leads to a rupture. And this sudden release of energy makes the ground shake. It can be a big shake or a small shake that are called tremors. So, we are going to review a little bit about the faults. We have the tensional or normal fault, which is the one that it's called divergent fault. And this one is the one that sleeps, okay, away from each other. Then you have the compressional fault, which is the one also known as convergent fault. They bump into each other. These are the ones that create mountains. And then you want the transpressional or strike slip fault, which is called the strike slip fault or transform fault. And this one is the one, the most common, that goes side to side against each other fault, and then all of a sudden they break through. So this is what happens when the fault releases its energy. Okay, everything that is above is shaken. And if it's made out of a rigid material, of course, it will break. It can have little ruptures or it can become this a big, huge damage. So the earthquake zone, or called, it's full of seismic hazards. Okay, when there is an earthquake, they are all going to be hazards or dangers. And you can check them by locating the faults. You may know where the faults are located. If you are on or near a fault, there are more probabilities that there is going to be happening an earthquake. So you need to learn from analogies. Check what happened before and what is going to happen then. That way you can think in advance. And you have to assess the probabilities. So there are scientific um, methods that tell you which probability there is of having an earthquake. There's no prediction because it's not an exact science. And then you can estimate its recurrence. That means checking history and the geologic resources And then you can estimate or tell in advance how long it took from each to take again. Pro- um, Earthquakes has been proven to be cyclic. So we can check in this map the global hazard of an earthquake probability. Probability. That doesn't mean that it's going to happen. It means that it's probable that it happens. So the Y parts that you see there are the least likely. I mean, there's like zero probabilities that it happens on earthquake. So it's almost over there in Greenland and a lot over there in Russia and of course in North America. Down in our continent in South America, we can see that the least probabilities have places such as over there towards Brazil, but as well as in Africa, there's the Central Africa part, which also has least probability. But then you can check it out that in Europe, there are zones that are most likely to suffer earthquakes. And actually, they do. So then we have a light green, and that keeps growing to different shades of green that brings low hazard. Okay, there's low probabilities of happening. But then you start getting moderate hazard, which are the green, the yellow parts. And of course, then it comes the pinkish, reddish, and brown, which indicates high hazard or very high hazard or extremely high, which is the brown parts. All of these, as you can see, run around what we already studied about to be the ring of fire. Okay, and the oceans. It's slipping through the coast of Japan and, of course, all North America and down in South America. So the probability of hitting earthquakes there are a lot. And actually, they do. And besides, it's very big earthquakes. So maybe you want to check some of these zones. You can just click it and you move on to a specific area, like the one that we are going to go next. So here we are, Venezuela. So you can check that in Venezuela, probabilities are quite medium, low, and also we have a high hazard zone. Okay, most of our country is free or low probabilities. Okay, and then you have in the middle zone, which has a moderate hazard that increases toward the coast. And it ends up with this stripe of high hazard and even very high hazard that includes the Andeans and of course the coast or like where it is close to Cumana and all those where we have big faults. So if you check them out, we have a big fault over there in Cumana, and we also have big faults in the Andes where it's the fault of Bocono. It moves on to a lower hazard risk onto Zulia and, of course, Falcon. And then if you keep going down, you see that our neighbor, Colombia, has also a bigger stripe with high risk. And if you keep going down, you see that Peru, and especially there with Quito and Lima also in Ecuador, you can see that there are a big probability. There's a brown zone, which is high hazard, extremely high. And there, when it's occur, is earthquakes are being very, very devastating. Then you can check what I was telling you before, that these white part that occurs over here from Brazil doesn't have least hazard or low, very, very, very low probability. And it goes increasing toward the coast. And if we keep looking down, which we don't have in this map, we will see that there is a very high risk also in the zone of Chile, okay, along the Andes. And it has been there created by very various faults along the path. So that's all, folks. See you next class to learn a little bit more about earthquakes.